Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nicole. My name is Ochanya Wells. I am Director of Community Outreach and Quality Assurance with STEPS Educational Group. I've been with STEPS since 2014, but I've been all over the place, particularly in the autism community. So I've worked with Learner, I've worked with Silver Lining Group, and now I'm here at STEPS, and I'm very, very happy in my position. The community outreach component really affords me the opportunity to connect with fantastic groups such as Connecting for Kids. So by building those relationships with groups in the community, I'm able to spend some time with you guys here this evening. So I'm really excited to be here. This is my first group with CFK, and we're going to talk some really awesome nerdy behavior stuff, and I hope you guys like it. Okay, so this evening we're going to be going through some ins and outs on a ABC data sheet. And basically ABC stands for antecedent behavior consequence. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of the tool, I want to kind of get into some myth busting, because I think when we're talking about things as sensitive as behavior, a lot of families or a lot of parents often think, well, my child doesn't have a developmental difference, or my child doesn't have an IEP, so is it truly behavior? Absolutely it is. And I'm going to challenge us just a little bit this evening to think about behavior through a different kind of lens, for the simple fact that behavior is simply communication. So whether your child has emerging language, or whether they do have an IEP and they have some behavioral needs that have been diagnosed, this is a tool that's kind of universal because it helps you identify patterns in your child's behavior at home. So Nicole, if you want to go ahead and share that, we can go through the different components of the tool. And I'll explain how this little gem is nifty and actually not as scary as it looks, I promise. Okay, so this is a tool that I've used in my career that I typically send home for families. We are working through behaviors at home, and there's a relationship between home and school where the contingencies might be implemented at school based on different things that are happening at home and vice versa. So in the top left corner, what you'll see there is where it says date and time. The reason this information is necessary is because, again, we're looking for trends, we're looking for patterns, and be able to identify those. It might be a specific day, there might be a specific activity. So down that left column there's AM, PM, because again, you want to try to hone in on as much setting event information as possible. Okay, and then to the immediate right of that, where it says antecedent, antecedent is exactly what it sounds like. It's something that comes immediately before that behavior. So what happened right before the behavior? Was there a loud noise? Did the dog bark? Did the phone ring? One thing that I will say tends to get a little muddy with the antecedent portion of this tool is that when you have something that could be triggering to your child at home, a lot of times these environmental triggers are things that we don't really necessarily consider triggers. And so try not to do much analysis as you're identifying what's happening right before the behavior, because you don't want to put yourself in a box and then restrict like those possibilities. So it might not bother you that the lights are on, but maybe your son or daughter does not like the lights on in the house. And it could be as simple as turning the lights on, and then, the next thing happens. So try to be as objective as possible. And this isn't where you necessarily want to start, assessing, well, I think he was upset about this, or I think he was upset about that. Literally, whatever it was that happened right before the behavior you're tracking, that's what you want to put in that box there, okay? So then if you go over to the next square to the immediate right, where it says behavior, what target behavior occurred? So what I mean by target behavior is, it's important to identify one thing at a time. If it's refusal to do homework, or if it's crying or refusing to get, in the bathtub, you want to minimize that down to a specific behavior like crying or work refusal, and then stick with that. Because if you're targeting too many behaviors at once on this sheet, you're not going to be able to identify those consequences as seamlessly as possible, or trends in those consequences as seamlessly as possible. So my recommendation for that would be to be very specific with what you're looking for, and then stick with that one specific thing, okay? And so in the consequence section, what we're looking for here is what happened immediately after that behavior. So you turn on the light, your child starts crying. The consequence is how you respond to it. Okay, so here's another fancy science nerd mythbuster for you. Okay, when you're getting into consequences, a consequence is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think that's one of the stigmas around the behavioral discussion, right? What's happening and what is the consequence for this child's behavior? What we mean in a behavior analytics sense is what happened immediately after the behavior occurred. So it's basically how you responded. Did you pick them up and give them a hug? That's the consequence. You put it in that box. Did you turn around and walk away? That's the consequence. You want to put that in the box. So there is no right or wrong answer for that section. You just want to respond what you did specifically at the time that the behavior occurred, okay? And then here in the note section where it's talking about any specific details or information that could be affecting your kiddos, such as lack of sleep, no medicine, sleep deprivation. Did they sleep at someone else's house, right? So if they're split households and it's dad's weekend, did they come back? Were they off? You know, was something going on there? So that note section is where you can be a little more detailed and a little more free with your information outside of those other three columns, okay? So again, antecedent, behavior, consequence, we're looking for one behavior specifically, and it doesn't matter who's, you know, taking track of like what specific behavior you're looking at. So if you're looking at trends or patterns or consistencies and like, okay, why does this always happen when this happens? Ideally, you should be able to look at this document and say, okay, so every day at noon, you know, he has a really difficult time with transitioning off of his iPad, right? And I know it's the age of technology, so all of us are struggling with transitioning off of our iPads. But let's say it's something like that, and it's always around noon. You can identify like, okay, what's coming after this? Is it lunchtime? Is it nap time? Is there something they're not looking forward to? So with consistent tracking of you know, what specific behavior you're looking for, which specific behavior you're looking for, the consistent tracking will allow you to identify, oh, wait a minute, like maybe he's not hungry yet. Maybe he's having a hard time expressing, wow, this is really fun. I'm not ready for this activity to be finished. And then it allows you opportunities for teaching, whether it's, you know, giving language that the child can develop independently, whether it's offering weighted choices, which is something that I think can be difficult at home sometimes because, you know, you want it done this way and you have a schedule to follow and this child needs to be at soccer practice and all you need them to do is just sit down and pay attention to his Zoom art class. Sometimes it's not that easy. And so being able to identify, you know, what can I do differently or what can I provide for my child in the home setting that can help deter or even reduce, right? Because behavior reduction is just as great as behavior extinction. It doesn't always go away right away, and sometimes it gets worse before it goes away. So it's important to not get discouraged if any of those things happen. But consistent use of tools like this will really, really help give more of a snapshot as to what's going on with your child at home, and hopefully can give you some answers with identifying what can your family do to support your child when they're upset. Okay.